I'm the senior Democrat on defense appropriations, and I represent the state of Delaware, where the now 6 Americans who've died in service to our nation will return sometime in the next 2 days. I expect that the Pentagon will come forward with a supplemental request for funding, and I will continue to support our troops and to make sure we are making all the investments we can to keep them and their families safe. But we need an open hearing so that you and the American people can get questions answered about the failures in planning that led to some of the challenges, the losses and mistakes in this war so far, so that we can get a clearer answer on how long this war will last and what its real objectives are, and so that we can get answers to the American people about how to get their loved ones out of harm's way. My office and many others is getting urgent calls from people who are stuck in the region, who are not currently able to get out, and there's more that must be done urgently to help civilians relocate out of harm's way, as long as we're being told that this war will continue indefinitely.
Are there concerns about munitions, stockpiles being low? Did they address that in there?
That was discussed, but I won't get into that in any detail.
You said the failures. What failures specifically are you referring to that they've experienced so far in this war?
Look, I think the administration took months to assemble a third of our Navy in the region to plan for and prepare for a war with Iran. And I think a better job needed to have been done about informing, preparing, relocating our diplomats, the families, the civilians on our bases and facilities. They're moving quickly to try and relocate them now that the war has begun. But the way we got into this war, I think, put the principal decision in another country's hands rather than ours, and did not lead to preparations in advance of the war starting that protected as many Americans as possible.
What is your understanding as to how much of the regime has actually been taken out? Just from Mullen and Graham say that the Iranian people have the opportunity to fight for themselves, essentially. Is enough of the regime gone for them to do that?
I'm stunned if they said that, because look, there's 1 million people in the Iranian security and military apparatus that are fully capable of repressing civilians who come out to protest in the streets. And I think we need to be careful about creating the mistaken impression that while we encourage the Iranian people to pursue a democratic form of government in the future, there's no clear commitment that I'm aware of for us to send any assistance, to send troops or to send arms that would allow them to actually defend themselves against a very aggressive Iranian regime.
Sorry, he said that the Iranian people have the opportunity to rise up from within. Is enough of the regime gone for the Iranian people to do that?
I've heard nothing that suggests that's the case.
Have they picked a successor yet?
I've heard nothing that clarifies what the plan. There is no clarity about the plans going forward.
What about ground troops?
Yesterday, Secretary Rubio was saying there is not a plan right now to facilitate the next iteration of an Iranian government. So it's just a military plan.
That's critical. There is not a plan.
Well, he said it's not part of their goals right now.
Right.
Those
are two different statements.
Does that comport with what you've heard in there, that the goal is purely military and it's not to facilitate a regime change or whatever comes next?
This briefing was principally focused on military, the events of the last 100 hours, and where we are in terms of military objectives. There was not a robust discussion of political objectives. That is exactly the sort of thing that we need an open hearing about, because as you remember, the war in Iraq had an initial phase that apparently went quite well, mission accomplished, and then turned into a regime building, nation building phase. That's where I think our greatest risk is, where the greatest risk for civilians in Iran is, and where the greatest lack of clarity in terms of planning and resources. I'll remind you, we used to have resources like Voice of America Farsi, like USAID's Middle East democracy programs that help support the opposition in authoritarian regimes in the region. For a variety of reasons, the chaos of Doge either substituted, defunded, suspended, or cut off those programs, and so there are not as many Iranians able to access the internet, able to communicate with each other, able to get reliable information, or informed about their options for trying to rise up today, as there should be. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.